On August 6th of 1990, Curt, Haku, and Brady Boone were involved in a bar brawl in St. Louis, which led to the arrest of Haku and Brady Boone. Curt was reportedly involved too, and apparently took a stool to the head. The brawl occurred after a customer tried to talk to a woman who was with one of the wrestlers, prompting Haku to allegedly grab the man by the throat and toss him across the room. Haku then started choking the man, and it took 4 bouncers and 6 police officers to pull him off. One of the police officers had a chunk of his back bitten out in the melee. Haku was charged with battery, resisting arrest, and destruction of property, while Brady Boone was arrested for battery. When Curt replaced Bobby Heenan as Flair's executive consultant, the Brain was a huge influence on him, and Curt even wore a suit with Mr. Perfect embroidered on the back, just like Bobby Heenan. Vince McMahon called it his Bobby Heenan starter kit. Bobby Heenan would say, "Curt Hennig is a tremendous athlete. His father, Larry, wrestled as the Axe. I called Irene, his wife, the Battle Axe. I've known Curt since he was a kid. Curt was like a Barry Windham or a Ray Stevens. He has the ability to bounce back into the ring. If he does something wrong, he can easily recover." When McMahon was hyping IcoPro as a bodybuilding supplement in the WWF, Curt gave his kid some before a football game. The kid ended up not playing because he had the shits for 4 days and couldn't practice. In the early 1990s, he had issues with absences while he was dealing with injuries, which led to some complications regarding his insurance with Lloyd's of London. He was involved in a significant injury claim that resulted in the insurance company tightening up their policies, as they suspected some wrestlers were not genuinely incapacitated. This was partly due to Curt's situation, where he remained involved in wrestling-related activities, such as being a commentator or executive assistant, even when he wasn't competing in matches. When an adjuster from Lloyd's of London called the H&R department of the World Wrestling Federation to gather more information about a policy, a lack of communication caused Curt's policy to possibly being looked at a little closer and eventually cancelled. The conversation hit an awkward silence when the representative from the WWF spilled the beans about a planned run-in during the next pay-per-view, which was No Way Out. Throughout the following week, Curt no-showed several WWF live events. At one time, he did speak with Vince McMahon over the phone, and it was reported he would be signing a lucrative contract with the company as a wrestler. When Curt no-showed WWF's pay-per-view No Way Out, the office realized it was something more than just a cold. In the April 7, 1997 edition of The Observer, Dave Meltzer would write, "Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard had a meeting with Curt Hennig and his father Larry last week at WWF headquarters in Stamford. Reportedly, Vince and Pritchard were an hour late, and the Hennigs were just about to walk out and leave when they arrived. During the meeting, they discussed the possibility of Curt returning, but it reportedly didn't go well, as Hennig was still upset about the WWF costing him his Lloyd's of London insurance policy, which would have paid Hennig a $300,000 lump sum payment. If you recall, WWF wanted Hennig to return to the ring a few months ago, and in the midst of negotiations, WWF sent a letter to Lloyd's of London over the insurance issues. That resulted in Lloyd's cancelling Hennig's policy. Bruce Pritchard reportedly sent the letter that caused the problem, and in the meeting, he claimed to know nothing about it. In turn, Hennig pulled out a copy of the letter, signed by Pritchard, and showed it to him. Anyway, the meeting didn't go well, and WCW is confident that he'll be coming to their side when his WWF contract expires. Last week, they had Larry Hennig on the show to cut a promo, specifically to show WWF that Curt isn't with them. As for Curt, word is he's much bigger and bulkier than he has been in recent years. Draw your own conclusions from that." He would also write, "There must have been major heat between Curt and Vince for not only Curt to jump, but to burn Vince and the company on 2 consecutive weekends on his way out the door." The story going around is that Curt had no interest in returning to the ring, as he was a very short time away from a lifetime disability settlement from his Lloyd's of London policy, which would have paid him a reported $300,000 lump sum. However, something happened that Hennig blamed Vince for, which led to Lloyd's not paying him the lump sum, which without the lump sum probably would have to lessen Curt's reasons for not wanting to return to the ring. Lloyd's no longer sells insurance policies to pro wrestlers after having to pay out such a high percentage of those that purchased policies in the short time that they were offered. Rick Rude, Ted DiBiase, Road Warrior Animal, Curt Hennig, and Nikita Koloff, among others, all collected on these policies. In the case of all but Animal and Curt, collected a big lump sum for permanent disability and to never return to the ring. When he decided he was going to return due to bitterness with McMahon, he decided to contact Bischoff and WCW. If it actually happened this way, then Bischoff and WCW would be much less in jeopardy of a tampering charge if Curt came to them rather than the other way around. In 1997, Curt was involved in a road rage incident in Iowa that led to his arrest. According to reports at the time, he became involved in a dispute with another driver while on the road, and the situation quickly escalated. The incident reportedly ended with Curt physically confronting the other driver, which led to a charge of assault. Curt eventually debuted in the WCW. He was brought in as a major name from WWF and quickly aligned himself with big factions within the WCW. Initially, he joined the Four Horsemen, but soon betrayed the group to align with Hollywood's NWO. This betrayal was a significant storyline, especially as it took place during the War Games match during the Fall Brawl event in 1997, where he turned on the Horsemen and helped the NWO win. In 1998, he continued to play a prominent role within the NWO. He later became part of NWO Wolfpack, the splinter faction led by Kevin Nash, but eventually shifted back to NWO Hollywood, joining Hogan again in the main faction's battle against the Wolfpack. This period involved a lot of shifting alliances due to the ongoing storyline between NWO Wolfpack and NWO Hollywood. Throughout 1998, he had notable feuds with WCW stars like Diamond Dallas Page and Goldberg. He challenged Goldberg at WCW's Bash at the Beach in July 1998, though Goldberg's popularity was at its peak, and he defeated Curt in the match. Due to lingering knee issues, his appearances became less frequent by late 1998, and he eventually took some time off for rehabilitation. However, his WCW run was still notable for his storytelling impact for adding his charisma to the NWO storyline.
There's only one thing that I hate, 'cause it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. I like NASCAR.
After he returned from his injury, he became involved in a faction known as the West Texas Rednecks, alongside fellow wrestlers Barry Windham, Kendall Windham, Bobby Duncombe Jr., and even Virgil, who is now known as Curly Bill. This group embraced a cowboy persona, and their antics provided a humorous yet competitive edge to the wrestling landscape. They would briefly feud with the No Limit Soldiers, a group represented by Master P, who would only make 2 appearances at $1 million apiece. After that, the group of relatively unknown wrestlers would be left to their own devices, and like the original No Limit Records, would fade away. The West Texas Rednecks gained popularity for their catchy theme song, I Hate Rap, which humorously criticized the rise of hip-hop culture and wrestling. The faction's dynamic allowed Curt to showcase his versatility, transitioning from the serious Mr. Perfect character to a more lighthearted persona that resonated with fans. Despite being the supposed villains, the Rednecks were ironically more popular with certain WCW audiences due to their anti-rap stance, highlighting the divide in musical taste among fans.